Hi, welcome to LB0 Fox India Norwegian Ham Ventures, and today I'm going to address a controversial topic in our hobby, and that's plugs. These are really cheap plugs from AliExpress. Can't remember how cheap they are, but I'll leave an overlay here so you can see that. Um, and how good are these plugs? Well, as anything in this hobby, it depends. But first of all, if you haven't heard about AliExpress before, AliExpress is an online marketplace where you can get pretty much anything. Anything from ham radio gear to clothes to campers to, well, pretty much everything. You can't get airplanes. I've tried that. No airplanes on AliExpress. But besides that, you can get pretty much anything in pretty much any quality and any price category. And AliExpress has been so kind that they sponsored this video. And of course, these plugs are from AliExpress. But I'm going to address a topic with the cheaper plugs, and that's usually that the plastic, the dielectric here, isn't really heat resistant. And when soldering plugs, that can, of course, be a challenge. These plugs come in 3 parts. You can use an RG213 cable here or similar. And then you have this adapter here for an RG58. So they're pretty versatile and they're cheap. And I gotta be honest, I've used these plugs a lot even before AliExpress sponsored me. There are a couple of issues though. If you take a look inside here, the insulation here between the center and the core is not really up to par. So it can be tricky to not get a short in the plug. What I have done is I've designed these little 3D printed grommets here that go over your cable just to isolate the center pin from the shielding here. You can use any piece of plastic for this, but just be aware if you use these cheap plugs, that's one of the caveats that come with it. But I'm going to do a couple of tests now, and the first test I'm going to do is I'm going to actually see how long does it take for the center pin to move when we apply heat. My soldering iron is heated up to 350 degrees Celsius. No idea how much that is in Fahrenheit, because Fahrenheit is, well, let's be honest, not a logical scale. So what I'm going to do actually, since I don't want to burn myself, I'm going to use a piece of helping hands here, and I'm just going to attach this here, and we'll angle this slightly upward and see how long we can apply heat before the center pin starts to move here. And I'm just going to add a little bit of solder here on the tip just so for heat transfer. So let's see. And I've seen worse plugs on this. It starts to move now. So it means you can't take too long in applying heat. You see now that the plug is crooked here. Let's see if it's actually not that hot. But if you look here, it's not straight anymore compared to this plug, which of course poses a challenge when inserting this plug into a radio. And the dielectric plastic here is actually really soft now, which is not good. So that's one of the caveats using cheaper plugs. I got an expensive plug here. I have no idea where it come from. I guess I got this from another ham. So let's do the same test on this one and see. It's the same type of plug. It just it's just a more expensive plug. This was just a plug I had lying around in my drawer. So let's do the same test here. Let's apply some solder for better heat transfer. And do the same kind of test here. And it's still not moving. Not moving at all. Absolutely not moving. So that's one of the caveats by using cheaper plugs. I'm guessing this plug is about 10 to 20 times the price of the other one. So there's bound to be a, oh, that was warm. There's bound to be a quality difference in them. Pro tip, don't touch the tip of the plug after that. So what do you say? How about we get a little piece of coax and we'll actually mount one of these plugs, and then we'll come back and do a conclusion on them. So the first thing we do when we mount the coax is we slide the ferrule on. Not doing that is going to be bound to cause some problems later on. Then I usually tend to measure, and I usually measure a bit long because I can always cut the center piece here. So let's make sure this is a little bit long. We're going to have that little spacer here on as well. So I'm thinking about here, we can always cut a little bit of the end. And please don't take this as an instructional video on how to mount plugs on coax. I am not by any means of the word an expert on this. Like so. And we're going to take the shielding and we're just going to fold that back onto the ferrule here, because this is getting its connection mechanically over the ferrule here. And just make sure that nothing's on the outside. We're going to do this quick and dirty just as an example though. Then we're going to take the isolation disc that I printed. And these are a little bit of a tight fit for RG58, but that's what I meant them to be, because then we know that they're good. And we're going to de-isolate the center pin here, like this. Give that a good twist until it's really nicely twisted so it doesn't fall apart when we insert it into the plug. I'm going to insert this into the plug here. And yes, I know I do have some of the shielding on the outside. We'll just trim that off later. That way we know we have a connection here, which is relatively good. Now, that actually brings us on to one of the other caveats with this plug. But we got it like this. I'm going to get a multimeter and we'll check for shorts right now before we solder. So let's just put the cable here in the helping hand, just so it actually sticks here. I'm just got to tighten this up a little bit. Tighten it up here. Now I usually take the other end of the helping hand just to attach the cable to as some part of stretch relief. Let's turn the multimeter on and see. And we have isolation between center and shielding. And that's good. That's what we want to have. And I can tell you from experience, without using one of these little discs or anything to space that out, that just won't happen. So let's just solder the center here. And again, I don't have my soldering glasses, which often poses a little bit of a challenge for me because everything soldering is at a distance where my regular glasses aren't good enough. So let's heat this up, and not too long. Get a bit of solder in there, not too much. We don't want it on the outside. I think that is plenty. Then we can just take the cable here and we can trim this off like this. And now to the next point. Yes, there is a mechanical connection here. I usually prefer to have a bit of solder here. The issue is though, heating this metal body up and not melting the dielectric plastic here is usually a bit of a challenge. So I usually do a really poor soldering job here, but I do add some solder, which is probably going to be a cold joint, but there is going to be some kind of mechanical fastening here. But this is because we don't want to do this too long, because if we do, we'll ruin it. So this is really poorly done. I mean, by any means of the word, really, really poorly done. Let's see if we can fix this one. I spilled some solder here. There we go, a little bit better. But we managed not to melt the outer port. And what I forgot was to attach this. Luckily, though, I have the other end of the cable. So let's just move this through and actually attach that. And that's something that if you use, if you're on the other end of the cable, you won't be able to do this. Like this. And then we're going to just measure for shorts once we get the cap on top here. So I'm just going to do like this and a bit of stretch relief. It's just so much easier when you have the helping hands. Let's get the multimeter out and do check for a short. No short. That's good. So let's tidy the desk up and be back with a bit of a conclusion. So I just brought another one of these plugs out from my drawer. I have a lot of these. And that brings us to the conclusion though, are these cheap plugs worth it? And I'm going to say yes, but yes with a little bit of a caveat. They are worth it for disposable cables, like field cables and stuff you're going to use once or twice. I gotta say, for my permanent installation at home, I use Messi & Poloni cable and Messi & Poloni plugs. And the Messi & Poloni plug is not 100 times as good, but it's better. And it's what I'd use for a permanent installation. But as long as you know the caveats, as long as you know that this plastic will at some point melt, it's definitely worth it. This cable or this plug is probably, let's say, 5 to 10 times the price. I wasn't able to melt the plastic here. That's a huge plus, especially when soldering the shield here. Makes it a lot easier. So buyer beware, buy one at your own risk. I go through a lot of these cables for my disposable cables. For cables I use for one-shot use, for cables I use portable. But I do not use them for my permanent installation. Have you used these cheap plugs? Let me know down in the comment section. Did you like this video? Thumbs up. Did you dislike the video and have watched this far? Thumbs down. And do leave a comment down below why you dislike this video so I know and I can improve for my next video. That's it for now, my friends. 7-3. See you down the bands. See you in my next video.